mindfulness turned into a productivity hack, a self-soothing technique for burnout employees, a tool to make us better workers, better parents, better versions of ourselves, without ever questioning why we are so exhausted in the first place. It became Mac Mindfulness. I never planned to be in psychoeducation. I kind of fell into it. Mindfulness, coaching. But behind the calm voice, I was walking on eggshells. There was a rule book. Yeah, no thanks. I ask questions. I live in the gray zones. This is space in between. No fluff, no filters. Welcome. You're in the right place. Welcome back to Space in Between, the podcast for the stuff you feel, but don't always say out loud. I'm Vesna, and I'm not here to sell you balance or help you breathe your way through another week of pretending everything's fine. Last time, we talked about the obsession with personal development, how trying to be your best self can start to feel like a full-time job with no vacation. And today, we're going somewhere just as uncomfortable: mindfulness. Or more specifically, what happens when it gets swallowed up by the same culture that makes us anxious in the first place. Let me tell you something you might not know. I've been a certified mindfulness teacher for over 10 years. I've taught hundreds of people how to slow down, breathe, and be with themselves. And I still believe in the practice deeply. Mindfulness, in its essence, means paying attention on purpose in the present moment and without judgment. It's not about escaping your thoughts or forcing calm. It's about noticing what's happening inside and around you with a sense of curiosity and care. You've probably heard that mindfulness comes from Buddhism. And yes, many of its roots are there. But the kind I teach is based on secular, research-backed programs like MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and MSC, mindful self-compassion. MBSR, developed by Jon Kabat-Zinn, brought mindfulness into healthcare, teaching people to face stress with presence instead of panic. MSC, by Christine Neff and Chris Germer, added something essential: self-kindness. But I've also seen how easily it gets hijacked. Because here's the thing, and you've probably seen it too: the calm voices, the workshops, the breathing exercises handed out like band-aids. We're told to manage our stress, focus on the now. But no one really asks why we are so stressed in the first place, or who benefits when we stay quiet and centered. So here's the question: is your mindfulness helping you feel more like yourself, or just making you better at tolerating things that should not be tolerated? Let me paint the picture. You're tired, worn out, on the edge. But instead of asking what needs to change, you're told to breathe deeper, to accept, to let it go. And slowly, without realizing it, the pressure stays. You just learn how to carry it more politely. That's the space we're sitting in today, between presence and performance, between calm and numb. Let's talk about it. 11 years ago, I started practicing mindfulness. Not the polished, picture-perfect kind, but the kind that slowly, imperfectly helped me show up for life, for pain, for joy, for all of it. Back then, mindfulness felt like a rebellion, a way of saying, I will not live on autopilot. But something strange happened. The more popular it got, the more packaged it became. Mindfulness turned into a productivity hack, a self-soothing technique for burnout employees, a tool to make us better workers, better parents, better versions of ourselves, without ever questioning why we are so exhausted in the first place. It became Mac Mindfulness, a term first popularized by Buddhist scholar and activist Ronald Purser to describe how mindfulness was stripped of its roots and turned into a commercialized, corporate friendly tool for stress management without challenging the systems causing the stress. So let's call it what it is: fast food spirituality. Come as you are, but live as a more efficient version of yourself. Stress, take a breath. Anger, take a breath. Rage at systemic injustice, maybe take a walk. It's mindfulness stripped of its backbone. Presence without awareness. Calm without context. And just like Big Mac, it's satisfying until you realize it leaves you numb, not nourished. Here's the paradox: mindfulness is beautiful. There's something sacred about noticing the way sunlight hits your coffee, about hearing your child's laughter like it's the first time, about standing barefoot on wet grass, fully alive. But here's the trap. We think if we can just master that inner peace, we can ignore the chaos outside. We build tiny inner gardens and pretend the world isn't burning around us. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. Because mindfulness that ignores injustice is not mindfulness, it's escapism. That's the space between being grounded and going numb. If your practice leads you away from the suffering of others, if it makes you more tolerant of the status quo, then it's not a spiritual practice. It's a coping mechanism dressed in yoga pants and corporate language. And believe me, this isn't about guilt. It's about responsibility. Because real mindfulness isn't just about feeling better. It's about noticing more. And sometimes what you notice isn't pretty. It means paying attention to who is not being heard, who gets interrupted, who is carrying the weight while others get to stay grounded. It's not just sitting with your breath. It's sitting with discomfort. It's hearing what is hard to hear and staying with it anyway. True presence does not tune out the world to protect your calm. It includes the world, even the parts that make you uneasy, even the parts that ask more of you. Mindfulness, when it's honest, doesn't just soothe your nervous system. It sharpens your awareness of the systems we live in. It invites you to pause, not just to feel better, but to see clearer. Because if your practice helps you stay centered while ignoring what's broken around you, it might not be mindfulness. It might just be looking the other way. Mindfulness can be radical. It can be an engine for empathy, a starting point for activism. In earlier episodes, we talked about microaggressions and unconscious bias, those quiet ways power and prejudice show up in everyday moments. And the truth is, they don't just live out there, they live in us, in our habits, reactions, and blind spots. This is where mindfulness becomes something more than stress relief. It becomes a tool for honest noticing, noticing without defensiveness, without fixing, without performing. It's the moment you feel yourself react to someone's tone, their name, their body, and instead of brushing it off, you pause, you get curious, you ask, where did that come from? Is this mine or something I inherited? What am I not seeing here? Mindfulness, in that sense, isn't about calming down. It's about waking up. It's not just about the breathing. It's about noticing what you've been breathing in your whole life, from media, school, family, culture, without even realizing it. Because bias doesn't always scream, it whispers. And mindfulness helps us hear it. It helps us sit with discomfort long enough to learn from it, long enough to change, not out of guilt, but out of awareness, out of care. Imagine using that beginner's mind, not just to follow your breath, but to ask, why is this system so violent? Why do some people never get to feel safe in their bodies? Who gets left out of well-being? That's mindfulness too. Not just as self-care, but as a collective care. Not just as a way to feel better, but as a way to see clearer and act differently. Because awareness without action, it's not enough. And regulation without reflection can become another form of silence. Real mindfulness means noticing what's happening inside and outside of you, and letting that awareness change something, not just in your nervous system, but in how you show up in the world. So next time someone tells you to just be in the moment, ask yourself, whose moment is it? Who gets to feel calm? And what happens when we expand mindfulness from personal relief to public responsibility? Maybe we stop selling inner peace as a product and start living it as a practice, one that includes other people, one that asks more of us than just closing our eyes and breathing. Because presence is not passive, it's a choice, a muscle, a way of being with the world, not a part of it. If this hit a nerve, good. That means you're paying attention. That means you're still human. And next time, we're talking about something most of us have lived but rarely name: internalized sexism. Not just how patriarchy shapes us, but how it teaches women to turn against other women, to compete, to judge, to distance, all while smiling. See you next time in the space between breathing through it and never speaking up. Stay uncomfortable.